All right, the next one we're going to talk about is an error code 6.1, which is an ignition failure.
Correct.
That means that the valve never saw the flame. I mean, it just didn't see it and it didn't start.
Yeah, it didn't sit and it didn't start. And depending on where we're at installation-wise, it's going to change the likelihood for what it is for this code.
Okay.
And so if it's a new installation, I'm going to look for certain things versus if it's an existing installation that's been running a while.
Okay.
And so the first thing I want to do is actually peek in the sight glass and see what's going down.
Okay, all right.
Right, so I come to the heater, it's going to the flash code.
I'm going to take off my sight glass, and then I'm going to...
Remove the insulation out of the way. And what we're going to do is turn the heater off, turn it back on, see what's going down.
Okay.
Right, so what we should see is once the blower kicks on, right, the igniter's going to start glowing, and the igniter's going to glow for approximately 20 seconds.
Okay.
Right, and after 20 seconds, if you listen very closely, you may actually hear the little click from the gas valve, and that's when we should see flame.
Okay.
Right, but on a new installation, typically what's going to happen is you may have a gas line that has a lot of air in it. You know, a lot of people are going to purge it right there at the water here at the sediment trap.
Right.
You have coming into the gas line. But if you didn't, you know, the heater may have to run through several of those ignition attempts to purge all the air out of that gas line.
Right.
And so if it's a new installation, you may actually have to turn it off, turn it back on to reset the code, allow it to try to cycle a few more times, and then, you know, it's probably going to be okay.
Let's say we don't see it glow, though. I mean, that's we got to have three things for combustion, and that's one of them, a source of ignition. What if it doesn't? What if we're not getting a glow on our igniter?
Well, that's typically what you'd see on an existing installation, right? It may not be glowing, right? And so if we look in the sight glass and we never see the glow, and then we just see the code pop back up on the heater, that's typically when I want to go inspect the hot surface igniter.
Okay.
Right? And what I'm going to do is actually do an ohms test on the hot surface igniter using my multimeter to see what I have going down. And so pretty typical to any of these newer water heaters that, you know, use a blower motor and hot surface ignition. I just want to find my igniter plug. Usually the wires are wrapped in high temperature, you know, wrapping. I want to unplug that. Find the two pins, which are generally labeled pins 1 and 2 for the hot surface igniter. Turn my multimeter to ohms. And what I'm looking for on this unit is a resistance reading between 42 and 76 ohms.
Okay.
Now that's at room temperature.
The hotter it is, the different.
It's going to change it.
Yeah.
So what I do is just check between the two pins, and I should have somewhere between 42 and 76 ohms.
You have 50.
Yeah, 50 ohms on this one. So, you know, of course, this is a new heater. The igniter's good in it. And so I always want to check that. Right
Okay.
now, if I check the igniter and I get an open reading, or I get, you know, some astronomical number, right, then that means the igniter's bad.
Okay.
Right, so you'd want to replace the igniter.
All right.
The igniter in this unit is separately replaceable. You can just get that part. And so if you don't get the glow, check the igniter. If the igniter's bad, replace it.
All right.
If the igniter's good and it's not glowing, then that's usually a gas valve issue, as long as your connection was good.
And that would be your gas valve. All right, so let's go ahead. We say we turn it off, we turn it back on. We're going to look through the sight glass to see what's happening. And what we're really looking for is a brief blue flame, right? If we see the glow, we're looking for a brief blue flame. If you don't have a flame, you're going to go one way, and if you do have a flame, you're going to go another way. So let's say we don't see the flame. We talked about this before. It's just on the gas side, right?
Yeah, it's usually going to be gas. So what I want to do is get my digital manometer and check for my manifold gas pressure.
Okay.
Right, there's an adapter fitting on the bottom of the gas valve. I'm going to screw in an adapter, turn it on. Now I'm only going to see gas pressure if I'm getting it in that 4 seconds after the igniter's, you know, warmed up fully.
Okay.
Right, and so if I check it and I don't get gas pressure, right, or it's a really low or anything, anytime my manifold pressure's off, I'm going to back up and check my supply.
Okay.
Because if I check it and my supply pressure's off, we really need to correct the supply pressure with the gas company.
Okay.
Then recheck manifold, and they usually fix it because it's just, you know, it's a regulator, so it can't regulate properly unless you have the right amount of gas coming to it. If I check my gas pressure and I never get gas pressure on this side, and I check my supply is within the correct range, that typically means my gas valve's just not opening up, and that would be a gas valve
Yeah,
issue.
and that's not a common issue. It's just something we have to explain to you because
Correct.
it could happen.
Correct with this code. Yeah.
Okay, so If you don't get a flame, it's on the gas side. We're going to go look, maybe it's a shut-off valve, something, got air in the gas line, especially on a new installation. That's what typically happens on a new installation, but it could be they didn't pay their bill. I mean, gas is not getting to the gas valve in that
Correct.
situation if you're not seeing that flame. Now, if you do see a flame, we're going another road. That's more electrical, right?
Yeah, and that's the more common thing we see with this, is that when we peek down through the sight glass, you see your igniter glow, you see your brief blue flame, it burns for approximately 4 seconds, goes out. That's almost, it's almost always going to be an issue with the flame sensor. And the easy thing about this is it's usually just a dirty flame sensor.
Right.
Right? Now the flame sensor, the heater's breathing in air, there's stuff in air, right? That's why you have air purifiers and stuff, these days, because there's so much stuff in the air. This heater uses outside combustion air, which is relatively clean, but there's still stuff in it. There can be stuff in the gas, and the little rod's burning in the flame. And what eventually happens is all that stuff floating around sticks to the rod,
Right.
the flame cooks it on there, and it just insulates the little rod. So usually what we want to do is get a piece of fine grade steel wool, polish that rod up, put it all back together, and that'll usually take care of it.
Yeah, and if that doesn't work, go ahead and replace the flame sensor.
Correct.
And that should take care of it as well. So, I mean, really, it's two different roads that you're going to go down. You're either going to go down the gas road if you don't have a flame. If you do have a flame, you're going to go down the electrical road, and that's usually your flame sensor. And that's the most common thing we look at, because it's burning some kind of contaminant on there and it's getting a buildup.
Yeah.
And it could be even where you're taking in air from outside. I mean, if it's in a building where you have an exhaust out there and you've got contaminants in that exhaust, and pulling it in can cause that to happen as well on that flame sensor.
Correct, and it's not uncommon for flame sensors on, appliances that use hot surface ignition to get dirty.
Yeah,
Furnaces do it, all this stuff does it. So, and the heater actually tells you a code that it's starting to get dirty, right? So it gives you a code saying, hey, my flame signal's getting weak, so clean me. Water heater still works. People don't check the water heater until it stops making hot water, typically. So with the maintenance code, it's usually missed until it eventually goes to the, hey, I'm not working code, right? Because I can't put flame sense. So if you're getting the flame and it's going out, get the steel wool, clean it, that
Right.
fixes it most of the